Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com. I want to thank you for being here with me today. If you're enjoying these strategy videos for Poker News, click like, click subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find the links below, or if you're watching it on Poker News, click the little link to go over to YouTube to click subscribe. That would help me a ton to continue spreading my words to everyone else who loves to get better at poker. So anyway, let's take a look at another hand from the $3,500 buy-in World Poker Tour event I recently took 35th place in. In this scenario, good player, Anthony Zeno, raises to 1,300 from early position. I have King, Queen of Spades in the hijack seat with a 30,000 stack. So 60 big blinds. This is a spot where I'm just going to call pretty much every time. King, Queen of Spades flops great. If someone 3-bets, we can even stick around. This hand's fine. So I definitely like calling and seeing what develops. If I re-raise here, notice if I make it, let's say, 4,500 or 4,000, Anthony Zeno can then call or 4-bet small or jam, all of which are not particularly great for me. So I would much prefer just to keep the pot manageable. Small blind, loose aggressive player calls as well. Flop comes Jack, 10, 8, and they check to me. Now, normally, this is a spot where you want to ask yourself, well, in all spots, you want to ask, how does this board connect with my opponent's ranges? And right here, this board should connect incredibly well with the small blind, loose aggressive player's calling range, because he should have a lot of medium strength hands like Jack 10, Queen Jack, Ace Jack, King Jack, 10-9, 10-8, 9-8, 9-7, right? All these hands are pretty good here. And under the gun +1, Anthony Zeno should have a lot of hands that connect with this board as well, right? So this is a situation where I need to proceed somewhat cautiously. I mean, yes, I do have a very obvious draw that I would like to bet, but given the stack sizes, if I do bet and get raised, I'm not particularly happy about it, right? Notice if I make a big bet, as I would do with a polarized range, which is typically what you want to be doing in these scenarios, I want to be betting my best hands for value, like straights, 2 pairs, sets, and then I want to be betting my draws. If I bet this hand and get raised, it'll sometimes just be all in. Notice if small blind raises over a 4,000 chip bet, it's just going to be all in, right? A lot of the time, or 12,000, which is close enough to all in, to the point that I don't really want to be in that scenario. So how do we sidestep that? Well, we just check. When you are playing very multi-way, you have to realize that you want to ask what could potentially happen that is really bad for me, and then sidestep that. And the thing that could happen that is really bad for me here is to bet and get raised. So I think we just want to check. So we're going to check and just hope to get there. Notice if an ace comes, it's going to hit Zeno's range pretty well. And if a 9 comes, well, either player could be sitting here with a queen very easily. So this is a spot where if we do get there, we're going to get paid. If a king or a queen comes, well, maybe not a queen, but if a king comes, that's probably good enough. We'll proceed with caution. This time we just get the nuts, though, so that's nice. They give us the ace on the turn, and they check to me. So now, as on the flop, if I'm going to bet, I want to be betting with my best hands and my draws. By the way, the draws on the flop that I would be betting, I think are going to be more hands like Ace-9 that are a little bit weaker. Maybe King-9 suited if I had it. I really don't have a ton of draws, though, do I? To be fair, I also don't have a ton of nut hands either, if you think about it. Anyway, here on this turn, I'm going to be betting with stuff like King-9 for sure, if I did have a bluff with that. Really, not a whole lot else. So in this scenario, I'm definitely going to be very value heavy. But in spots like this, even if you are value heavy, you want to ask yourself who has more nut hand, or who connects well with this board, right? That's a very important concept. Who connects well with this board? And really, if the answer is everyone, that should typically allow you to just bet bigger. Because if your opponents have a lot of hands like top pair or middle pair and a draw, they're just not going to fold. So if they're just not going to fold, you might as well bet on the bigger side, like 4,000. Notice if we bet 4,000, pot's going to go up to about 17,000. If we are against the small blind, that will actually allow us to make a slightly bigger than all-in jam on the river, which I think is fine. And, against Zeno, it'll allow us just to get a really, really big bet in on the river. So I do bet 4,000. Small blind calls. All right, great. As you see, what happened there with the pot? Pot didn't add up for some reason. Pot should be 20,000 here. On the river, the opponent now leads for 3,000. Not too sure why the opponent leads for 3,000. Obviously, the backdoor draw comes in, which is always a bummer. it is important to realize that the opponent could just have the backdoor draw, right? A lot of players think, oh, they can't have the backdoor draw, but why couldn't they? They check the flop, as they would do with their whole range. They check called the turn, as they would do with all sorts of hands with a 9 and maybe a pair or something like that. Notice if he had 10-9 of clubs, 10-8 of clubs, King-8 of clubs, King-9 of clubs, right? All those hands exist. So the opponent definitely could have a flush. The question, though, is would the opponent lead for 3,000 with a flush? And this is where I typically fall back on the idea of I just don't know what my opponents are doing. This is a loose, aggressive player, probably a little bit creative. If the opponent's a little bit creative, maybe he is leading small to try to induce a bluff or an overvalue, right? I certainly don't want to fall into that. And if the opponent is making a blocking bet, a traditional blocking bet with a hand like one pair, maybe ace-9, maybe a hand like king-jack, I don't know, something like that, he's going to fold if I raise. So in this scenario, there's really just no purpose in raising unless you know your opponent will lead small with hands like 2 pairs and sets and then call a jam. But I just don't know that to be the case here, right? So I have the best hand in this scenario almost every time, but if I raise, I'm not really sure how the opponents are going to proceed, and I don't want to risk a substantial amount of chips. Notice it would be almost all of my chips in a scenario where I could just be against the flush. I don't think I'm against the flush very often, but when I am, it's really, really bad for me to raise. So I'm just going to call, and we beat ace-king. So this, I suppose it makes a little bit of sense. I'm surprised the opponent didn't just re-raise pre-flop. Seems like a pretty obvious spot to put in the 3-bet pre-flop, but he didn't, and we played it in a manner that allowed us to get a whole lot of money in the pot. If the opponent checked the river and I went all in, by the way, he'd probably fold, right? He probably should fold. So we probably don't get paid in that scenario. So I guess we're even kind of fortunate the opponent decided to lead the river for a little bit because that put 3,000 more chips in the pot that I otherwise would not have gotten. So that's going to be it for this hand. I apologize for stumbling over my words a bit today. Poker's a tongue twister sometimes, and I do my best with it. Hopefully you all appreciate it. So that's going to be it. Good luck in your games. Have fun. Thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.